Welcome back to the Mentor Roulette grind. This time, the Wheel of Jobs decided that we play White Mage on the Monday evening, and this set was a lot of 4-man content, and a weird mix of very good groups, and then something weird came up here and there. That said, for Duty 1, we start with Hostile Hangouts, and I guess the best you can do here is probably spreading Aero, mostly because mobs might not live long enough to cast Stone, but if they do, they might also live long enough for Aero to make sense. Hard to say really. One thing is for certain though, it is unlikely you will need to heal anyone. For Duty 2, we went to Titan Normal, which is rather curiously frequent considering how little I've seen of the normal version primals for so long. The way I optimized this fight was trying my best to only heal when Titan was not attackable anyway. I also decided to hold my presence of mind until the final phase, as I had a sneaking suspicion I would only get one in the entire fight, which, all things considered, I happened to be right about, as the total fight length from the pull to the clear was 1 minute and 55 seconds. Normally, this is a kind of optimization that usually only comes up with harder fights where you might completely spreadsheet the whole thing so you know that you only get a certain number of uses of a cooldown, so you can plan it out a bit more conveniently, or like choosing to have a gem draft that is less optimally placed such that you can get 3 over the course of the fight. But if you know you have a 2-minute cooldown in a fight shorter than 2 minutes, you might as well choose to use it at the most optimal time, when you only get 1 anyway. For Duty 3, we went to Castrum Meridianum. Overall, the group was solid. The Dark Knights seemed to use their toolkit well, although I don't think I saw the ninja use Doton at all though on AoE, which is a bit surprising. What did stand out to me was the Black Mage, who seemed to refuse to use Fire 2, Blizzard 2, Fire 3 and Blizzard 3 for switching states, and always transposed. Even when they were using Fire 2 and Blizzard 2, it was clear from the way they had to Blizzard 2 twice to max out MP that they used Transpose for it. Usually, the explanation is that they don't realize that the spells inherently enable switching, but it is surprising when they are not using Blizzard 3 at all as a result. They did seem to use Firestarter procs though, so it wasn't all bad. For those a bit confused by this, once you hit level 35 or above, Fire 2, Blizzard 2, Fire 3 and Blizzard 3 all instantly switch you to the highest state of their element, regardless of what you had before. Before this level, you effectively have to use Transpose to not have to switch to no state on the way there. It is significantly better to switch state with these spells over awkwardly building up in this state though. Another possible reason for the misunderstanding is reading that the opposite element does less damage when used like this, which motivates to not do that. However, Black Mage is a lot about time saves to get to spend as much time as possible doing the most effective thing, which makes this all the more convoluted. Anyway, despite all that, we still cleared reasonably quickly for Castrum Meridianum. For Duty 4, we went to Angry Delinquents, and the only real difference is that this time I tried to prioritize the Gorbu a bit. It is by far the chonkiest mob in the duty, so relying on the tank to AoE everything else is often effective. For Duty 5, we have Derpy Dances again. Did you know that Hana means flower in Japanese? I don't really have anything else to add at this point. For Duty 6, we went to ARF, which is also weirdly frequent as of late. This group was straight up solid. As a result, a thing I messed around with and paid attention to a bit in the duty was Holy Stuns. I talked about this in a recent video about misconceptions as well, but the general idea is that for the most part, spamming Holy should typically lead to the same amount of stun duration as if you carefully meter it out. The shorter cast times on Holy since its inception has changed this interaction mildly. The reason for that is that it appears that the check on how the stun should interact is decided when the cast finishes, meaning, for instance, that if you simply cast Holy naturally, the first Holy will often barely land before the next one finishes, meaning the next Holy sees that there is already a 4-second stun. However, if you use something like Presence of Mind, you can finish casting the second Holy before the first one lands, causing the second Holy to also apply a 4-second stun, causing it to stun for 4 seconds and then reset to 4 seconds again. This can happen multiple times where you might stun for 1 second twice later and makes the stuns from Holy really unpredictable. Now, with that sidetrack covered, the only issue that came up on the duty was right at the end where one of the DPS died to Dual Star. But that didn't really cause any problems due to how late it happened. For duty 7, we went to Stone Vigil, and it seemed like the tank pretty much single-pulled the whole dungeon. The thing is, I don't really mind, although it's a bit boring at times. At the same time, I did not see the tank perform to such a degree that I was confident they would be fun to heal with more packs. So I was not going to give them ideas. We even pulled an optional pack at one point after the first boss, which, by the way, involved a surprising amount of avoidable damage hitting one of the Pictomancers. On the second boss, both the tank and the same Pictomancer got hit by avoidable mechanics quite a lot too, but I managed to figure out the fight well enough that near the end I deliberately let the team stay low, expecting to be able to kill the boss before it kills us, and ending up being right. After this boss, the other Pictomancer seemed to do silly little oopsie extra pack pulls to try and motivate the tank to go a bit faster for the rest of the duty. I'm guessing they determined I could take it. It did get quite scary on one of the pulls where the tank survived by virtue of just my Cure 2 spam alone, and to some degree, the simple fact that Presence of Mind came off cooldown in time. That said, the duty still cleared reasonably well. For duty 8, we went to Porta Decumana. As a white mage, this fight can get quite scary if you want to optimize, as optimally, you only use Medica 2 if most, if not the entire team, gets full value out of it. Similarly, if you can get away with it, only a regen here and there in addition to your singular benediction for the tank. However, white mage does have a very solid filler spell in Stone 2, so the less time is spent healing, the faster you can do the duty. Notably, Medica 2 is better used if at least 2 players get full value of it, over regen, ignoring MP efficiency of course. In this particular group, especially during phase 2, I noticed that our samurai is not really dodging things well. Not only that, but they're actively dodging stack markers, which is never a good sign. On top of that, I don't think I saw Higanbana active on the boss at any point. Right at the end, a particularly funny sequence I noticed was the samurai using NP, then Iaijutsu, then Limit Break. They also randomly fit Third Eye in there. I just got the impression that they were somewhat randomly mashing buttons. We of course still managed to clear. For duty 9, we went to Keep of the Lake, and I do believe Mocha knew me. Hello! Overall, the run went very well, but there were some random points where the tank seemed to randomly single pull, when we easily could have pulled more. At the end, we also had our funny glow stick party for a bit. Now, a funny thing about this dungeon is that, largely due to the quantity of large hits rather than the size of them, did you know that Scholar can solo Keep of the Lake synced? It really comes down to careful adloquiums and lustrates in the multi-stacks on Midgard's armor, but it is really possible at a point where tanks don't have that much self-healing yet. For duty 10, we went to Holminster Switch, which is always quite a challenge. There were a few times here and there where I would say, I think the Dark Knight could have used a bit more mitigation, but we managed. I also feel like I have never used Divine Benison as frequently as I did in this duty. A general tip about that is that given Divine Benison is simply a weave and has a very short cooldown, simply using it whenever the tank is taking damage is not a bad call. Sure, once you have charges on it, holding one for a tank buster or something is a great idea, but simply using the barriers to reduce damage intake can greatly reduce the amount of healing you need to provide elsewhere. At the end of the dungeon, I also used Rescue to reposition the ninja after they had finished casting Limit Break, while they were stuck in the animation. Remember, this can be super helpful if someone is stuck in the Limit Break animation, as a mechanic is hitting them, whether it's a tank using Tank LB, a healer raising everyone, or a DPS attacking. Finally, for duty 11, we went to Vanguard. Indeed, our warrior did gradually get better about using their defensive cooldowns throughout the duty, but the fact they were quite consistently doing things like using Rampart before entering combat should definitely be your indication that they don't quite know what they're doing. In fact, at some points you get to see exactly how "you don't need anything other than bloodwetting" looks from the perspective of the healer. Which is to say, the moment bloodwetting drops, with no other cooldowns, it feels like the tank's HP just free falls. And yeah, if the tank isn't using anything, you certainly cannot trust them to use something when they do drop low. Despite everything, we of course did not have any wipes, so it was difficult to have that much to complain about. It certainly got me to think a bit more than usual. On the second boss, things got particularly scary after one of these Search and Destroys, as I needed to use almost every cooldown I had to be sure we didn't get clobbered by the follow-up raid wide. Preventing deaths caused by too many Vuln stacks can be quite difficult for White Mage, but the best you really can do is Temperance for the damage reduction, maybe Aquaveil for the one with the most Vuln stacks alongside a Divine Benison, and of course, make sure everyone is topped up. It is a bit of a shame when a set is just a lot of the same, and nothing really standout happens. But it is not that surprising that when doing Mentor Roulette as healer, it leads to the most mundane duties coming up frequently. There's still ways to make it interesting though, and I hope some of the groups got some value out of my presence, whether the run going forward fast or feeling safer was what helped. At the same time, we're also closing in on 3/8 on the achievement progression, although what I'm really excited for is the halfway point. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Ko-Fi, link in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, before Endwalker, both Glare and Holy had cast times of 2.5 seconds, meaning that the only times you could realistically weave something was when reapplying your dot, or when using lilies. Although, before Endwalker, Aflato's Misery only did 3 times the damage of a Glare rather than 4, so in a strange way, that would still not be considered quote-unquote optimal if you could help it.